Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Randolph. I'm the ATD Austin President, and I am here with you today with a special presentation. We are doing a special episode of the podcast. We're actually on video today, and I'm joined by some lovely folks who I'll introduce here in a second. But I want to set the context for what we're going to talk about today. So, let's start with something that might sound a little counterintuitive. We're living through one of the most significant shifts in how work gets done. AI, automation, digital transformation, all of that is happening really fast. And yet there are skills that are becoming more critical, not less critical. And really those skills are not the ones that I've just talked about. It's the ones that are really distinctly human. And so at ATD Austin this year, our theme is from leading to building. And here's what that means to me, at least. This year is about establishing credibility, helping people make sense of the changing landscape. And it's about what comes next, taking insight and turning that into action. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the insights that we have today and, from the workplace, from our experience, and hopefully turn that into human-based action, human-based skills that we can use. And so, and honestly, like that's one of the biggest things that we need to be exploring right now is those human-based skills. And so we're going to dive into coaching, difficult conversations, career development, and strategic communication all across the spectrum of this conversation. And I'm joined with two great folks here who are going to help me along the way and navigate this shift, and really trying to get to the question of what we're wrestling with. Why are human-centric skills surging in demand right now? And more importantly, what can we actually do about it? So let me introduce my colleagues here as we get started. I'm introducing firstly Richard Hyams. Richard is let me get my notes right, senior facilitator, faculty lead, and ICF certified coach with Erickson Coaching International. Erickson Coaching International is one of our main sponsors this year at ATD Austin. And we're so glad to have Richard here with us to not only represent that body of expertise, but also to share his experience. So thanks, Richard, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm also joined today by Leah Karuba. Leah is a dear friend of ours at ATD Austin. She's been a chapter leader for a number of years. She's still a president emeritus and still very much involved with the chapter. Leah's a learning and development executive who's been focused in sales enablement and sales coaching throughout her career. And again, she's plugged into the workforce right now and giving us a perspective on what it takes to bring those human-centric skills in the workplace. So thank you, Leah, for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right in. Richard, I want to start with you.
Sure.
If you had to describe what you're seeing across your coaching practice in one sentence, what's the thread that connects all of it back to human-centric skills right now?
Well, it certainly does. And so what I'm seeing is, or hearing from people is in the classrooms that I teach and with the clients that I have, is that it's fundamentally what you said, is how can I, the client, or the learner, maintain connection with other human beings in this world that's, as you just said, becoming more AI driven, and that's not just in a one-on-one context. Something that is really on the growing curve is working with teams. How do we work with teams? How do we work collectively together? How do we create cohesion? How do we go from conflict to collaboration? It's a big topic right now, and so when I'm coaching one-on-one with leaders, that comes up, and then in the context of teams itself, at Erickson we also have a team coaching certification program, and that's a big hot topic right now. Probably team coaching is the fastest growing niche on the planet currently, along with health and wellness coaching, and that leads me to also say that emotional regulation is hot. Well, I want to say hot topic, but really it's more, it's a relevant evolution of the conversations that we're having at Erickson within the classrooms as well as one-on-one. It's something that people want to be able to step into, meaning being emotionally regulated as a leader and have typical conversations to maintain their regulation. But more than that, it's the capacity for people to be emotionally regulated, because the research shows that if somebody is a leader who's looked at as a leader and is not emotionally regulated, dysregulated, it has an actual what's a measurable impact on other people's nervous systems. This is a big thing right now. So this is what I'm noticing. I sort of gave you a big global answer to that. Yeah.
No, but I appreciate that. I think there's a couple things that I would call out from it. You know, we talked about team dynamics and, again, team coaching. Yeah, you mentioned going from conflict to collaboration.
Yeah.
There is from my experience and what I'm seeing right now, again, in a world where we are moving at pace to try to implement the next tool, to be first in line for the thing, to prove value, especially in a workforce that likely sits behind a computer desk most of the day. There's a constant chasing of, I need to do this, or I'm going to have some fear of being replaced, or some fear of missing out or not keeping up that goes along with that. And the conflict piece of that, especially within teams, is that when you have team dynamics that allow you to say, well, Mike does really well, and maybe Leah doesn't keep up, but we know Leah keeps up, or Richard doesn't keep up, right? You know, like there's this constant push and pull within a team that like really makes it difficult for them to want to be a cohesive team rather than an individual that stands out. I'm curious if either of you have seen that in the workplace recently.
100%.
Oh, I'll let you go first. Yeah. Well, I just say absolutely, definitely. And what we tend to do as human beings is focus on what to do, when to do it, who to do it with, and I'm missing one. What to do, how to do it. That's typically where the conflicts start. And what we've noticed at Erickson that works is getting the team back to the why we're doing it, the meaning behind it, and as best we can, getting them aligned to some kind of vision or enrolled in the vision, how it would benefit others. This project, this product, this service, whatever it is, right? And it's so easy to let that go, to dismiss that and get right into the nitty-gritty of the doing, and unfortunately, that's where the conflicts come in. You know, we've all known. If you've been in university, we all know what it's like to be on a team, and there's that one person doing everything, and then somebody else is doing nothing, but the whole team gets the good mark, right? This happens in teams as well. Yeah.
Yes, that what you just said resonates so much for me. You know, having just led a team of 8, where the dynamic was initially conflict and high integrity, high work ethic, and others kind of not having the why, not knowing what their focus was, and bringing them all together. And that why, who are we serving? Why are we serving them? And giving each of them the opportunity to shine. Because I think sometimes with group dynamics, with that cohesion, people are in conflict because they're anxious about what skills they are building, especially now with how rapidly we have to build those different AI fluencies. Being able to say to them, each of you has a beautiful skill that we can develop, and let's share those, and let's debate and discuss rather than pitting them against each other. And you will always have people who are early adopters and faster to try things. And that's where giving them the time to share with others and making them mentors actually fits into the picture, rather than this person knows so much more and the rest of you are, out the door.
It's interesting you bring up the AI fluency piece, and again, the pace at which you might get to that, or which individuals might get to that. Like that's truly, this is actually going to bleed into the second point I was going to pull out, Richard, from your initial thoughts around emotional regulation. But seeing others, comparing yourself against others, and saying, oh man, that feels bad. Like Mike got there so much faster than I did. Why didn't I do that? Like, why am I not, oh man, I had so much time and he had a little bit of extra time. And all of a sudden he has this magical thing that's up there. Like AI is a tool that can allow for individual creation at pace that we've never seen before. I have a good friend that calls it an abundance tool. It really is an abundance tool. Again, we're talking about generative AI, right? But that abundance can also lead to a point where people are in competition with each other, that they have that emotional dysregulation that they experience on a consistent basis, that makes it so the conflict boils to the surface much faster than you actually get from a maybe a traditional work environment or a work environment that happens at a different pace.
Yeah. What you made me think of is a chapter I just read. So I was at the CLO exchange and I heard Liana Knudsen, who's the VP of talent for Dell Technologies, talked about psychological safety. And then she casually mentioned a book that she'd written called Fostering Potential in People. And the first chapter is about regulating, as a leader, regulation. So, that really connected for me, that the fact that like being calm, having enough sleep, getting enough exercise, doing the things that you have to do to be a good leader, and also modeling that is important to developing other people, to being able to coach effectively or facilitate effectively. But that sparked for me. I was like, and when she talked about psychological safety and the fact that it was in relation to innovation. So all of this innovation is happening, but you can't do it without telling people it's okay to fail. It's okay to try things and, maybe learn something and iterate.
Oh, there's so much to add to that, if you don't mind there, Mike.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. There's some really interesting research that has shown that the capacity for people to be creative and what we call at Erickson solution finding, generating multiple solutions, is greatly diminished just by the tone of voice of the leader. If the voice is directive and accusatory, it diminishes their capacity to be creative, because what it does is it hijacks. You've heard of the amygdala hijack, probably. It hijacks the brain system in a way that there's a survival, fight or flight response, right? So all of the brain activities mostly focus in the primitive parts of our brain that are responsible for our safety and our sense of belonging. If that gets compromised, and the capacity to imagine new potential futures, which is the neocortex, the newer brain that makes us human, is a visualizing system. Whether people believe that or not, we cannot operate without visualizing. And everything starts as an idea, and it's usually a picture, usually unconscious, but that's how it starts. But that shuts down just by the tone of voice of the leader. And the tone of voice is influenced by posture, by breathing, by the emotional regulated state of the person. Yeah.
So, Richard, when you're starting with leaders, like, what is the starting point for recognition of the need for emotional regulation? Is it a cue that you take from the leader and what they say? Is it a practice that you put into place? Like, how do you, like, what's that place that you get them started to, like, again, begin to realize that emotional regulation is necessary?
Well, that's an interesting question, because coaching is an asking, not a telling modality of communication, if it's true pure coaching. So, and it's client-centered, at least the Erickson coaching that we teach. So I'm not going to impose anything on the client that from my bias, from my point of view, but I'll wait for it to come up. And if it comes up, then we work with it. And because our framework is solution focused, our aim first is to shift the person from the problem state or the problem focus to the solution. Now, that doesn't mean, when I say solution focused, doesn't mean finding solutions for the problem. What it means is, what is the opposite of that you want to create or have or do or be differently? So the place to begin, if this person, and it's not just true with leaders, it's anybody I'm working with, is requesting as part of that conversation to shift from dysregulation. They may not use that word. They probably use nervous or challenged or
anxious,
right? And the first thing we do is ask, what is the opposite of that you do want? That's the solution focused magic, right? Because what we put our attention on, we get more of. And we all know what it's like to get some news or something that triggers us, and we start to cycle through our brain. Why did this happen to me? What do I need to do to get out of it? And we go into we typically go into avoidance strategies, right?
Hmm.
And some of them can be unhealthy, right? Like overeating or having a cigarette. So what we do is we ask them, who do you want to be? How do you want to show up in the same context that's positive? What's the opposite of nervous for you? And then they say, I want to be confident, which is very common today. People want confidence and competence, right? And then we help them build up a model inside themselves of what that would be like, why it would be important for them, how it would benefit others, how they would behave differently. And out of that, they can begin to develop new micro habits to step in and become that version of themselves that is the opposite of this dysregulated state. So I hope I'm answering your question.
No, you are, and
Yeah.
I think in terms of so when I talk about this, and again, when you're getting people to again maybe explain a little bit more the situation that they're in, I like to think of it in terms of tension. Like there's some pull that you're experiencing on your body physically, your brain physically, or again, brain in some way, the way you're thinking about something, but there's some tension between, again, like your at relaxed state or at normal state, but then like, and that you experience in this moment, that's that signal to you that's that thing that's firing to say like, hey, there's something off with this. And that dissonance then that you feel that comes from that really is a place that people, they physically experience, but they don't like always know how to name it, and they don't know how to give it form. And I think to your point about like using the coaching questions to help people get to the point of like actually explaining what that means, like giving a form really does open up the door to say, okay, cool, where does this come from, or what do you think is the basis for this? Where did this start? So I mean, it definitely resonates with how I've experienced that in the past, but also how I ground myself in those situations.
Well, it's interesting because in solution focus, we say we don't always have to know the cause of something in order to make
Interesting.
a
Okay.
change, right? So I don't need to know why I smoke in order to decide that I don't want to be a smoker anymore. And I don't need
Sure.
to know why I have this nervous trigger. I don't really need to. Sometimes it's useful, but not always. And that's an old habit, I think, that we have culturally. At least everywhere I've taught in the world, it seems to be we want to explain our behaviors and make meaning out of it. And it seems we believe it helps us to know the cause of something, but it's not necessary. And I say that in the most loving, non-dismissive way.
Sure. Sure.
Just decide who you want to be instead, and let
Yeah.
everything else corral itself around that. Otherwise, we can spiral into, what's wrong with me, and why does this always happen to me, and whose fault is it, and
Yeah.
all of these things are not that very useful in order to develop. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that the spiral is so easy to step into, and oftentimes difficult to get out of. I'm curious, like Richard, and maybe Leah, once he answers, I'd love to hear from your perspective as well. Like like what are you seeing? You said you're seeing teams come to you for team dynamics and emotional
Yeah.
regulation. How are they presenting that to Erickson, to you, as like that problem statement? Like what is the shape of that in the workplace right now? Because it's easy for us to talk about emotional dysregulation. We kind of all understand what that means on this call, but like, what does that actually look like in like real life when you're working with a client to say like, I have a problem, or I'm seeing something, or like we think we have an issue with, like, what is that problem statement?
Well, I hope I understand your question correctly. I mean, there's emotional regulation, and then there's two types of dysregulation. One's avoidance. So in a team, people can shut down. That's avoidance, right? It's an avoidance strategy. They shut down. It's fight, flight. This is freeze, right? But others might become combative, right? Sarcastic, passive aggressive behaviors might show up. They might unconsciously even sabotage the project. I've seen that happen as ways to compensate for the unwanted feelings that they have. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question though.
No, I think
Yeah.
you're getting at the heart of it. I really appreciate that, because what you're saying, and when you're saying that, is like, my team is having a problem that they don't share their perspective when I challenge them on an issue, or I've had people that are running in different directions and not talking to each other, and there's an unwillingness to talk to each other. Like, can you help us with that? Like, those are the
Exactly.
problem statements of like how they get to you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So they seek out the leader of the team as a mediator, right, rather than confront each other in itself. Right.
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Go
Yeah. Do you want to share? Would you want to share?
like a
Yeah.
referee kind of thing. Yeah, that's common,
Yes.
and that's more common in certain cultures than others. That some cultures would willingly confront each other, but others, out of whatever reasons, right, politeness and don't want to hurt people's feelings, they want you to solve it. The leader, I mean, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Leo, how are you seeing
That
those show up in the workplace? Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting because I've seen it in both the board leadership that I do, where I'm the president of a board, and like yourself, and people come to me rather than talk to each other. And I absolutely saw it at the beginning when I was starting to lead my team, that people were accustomed to talking to one another or to the leader rather than coming together. And it was an act for me, and I was aware of it because of when I was the president of ATD Austin, that was something that I saw all the time, and I didn't handle it very well back in the day. And I was very clear through some great coaching that was something I wanted to shift. And I think if leaders don't see that skill set for us teaching leaders how to bring people together in a comfortable discussion debate versus conflict, and actually helping them understand that confrontation is different than conflict and that debate is healthy. And I spent a lot of time at the beginning of my time with my previous role really helping the team to see it's okay to disagree. In fact, in learning and development, that's how we iterate. One person thinks it should be blue, another person likes the berry color in the palette. We have to bring people together. And so what you're saying around bringing the team together and giving them the opportunity to discuss and debate and be comfortable with conflict. And you're right, in different cultures it is very different, I think.
Yeah.
And we know when we do training in some cultures, we have to engage the leader first before anyone else will talk. But in this case, when we're trying to develop our team or coach leaders, I really think that helping them to see that don't be the referee, because in the end, it doesn't help anyone develop.
It doesn't, and
Yeah.
it ignites what's called the drama triangle or triangulation.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Where somebody is the rescuer. That's this person being asked to referee, and one's a
Yes.
victim and one's a perpetrator. What's so interesting is people can switch roles in the dynamic, right? So the leader can become the perpetrator because they're not listening or they're not solving it for the person, and
Yes.
it's yeah. So
It's-
to supersede
that's a
that
great
is
point.
it's common. It happens in families too, right? To supersede that triangulation, I go back to the leader. I can see no other way around it. Needs to practice their own capacity, be regulated before having those kind of conversations. Then they're in what we call an Erickson coach position, which I can describe as an objective witnessing, right? Not married to the emotions, not getting triggered by other people's emotions, not getting caught up in their narrative and their story, but still being caring and a presence, right? And their tone of voice and their posture and their languaging all reflects that, right? So that's number one. And I think, not every time does this work. I can't say this is a magic pill kind of thing, but going back to what is the outcome? What was our direction, right? It's like a family going on holiday and they're in a car and they're going across the United States, and then the car breaks down and they're arguing about the car and they're arguing about whose fault it was and who's driving bad, and somebody comes along and just asks, well, where were you headed, right? And how are you going to get yourself back on the road and get back there? It's very much like that.
I love that analogy.
It's interesting too, because I think in the context that of the learning and development professionals, again, where Leah and I spend a bunch of our time too, is like we've been in a field we are in a field that has a lot of times been viewed as like order takers, that has been viewed as the folks that like, we're going to tell you how to do this, we're going to tell you what we want, go do it. I need a course built, I need a training built, I need all of these things built, go do those things and then bring it back to me when it's done, and then I'll go and use it and you can move on to your next project.
Yeah.
But in reality, like that one, we know that approach doesn't work. But we also know that like when we use practices that we've used time and time again, I'm thinking like instructional designers, the folks that actually create curriculum, right? When they don't challenge it, when they're not walking into those spaces to say like, hey, what is the new thing? Or how might I get to this destination a little bit differently now based on the tools that I have? Again, centering back on the conversation around AI with this. There's going to be a tension at what they're capable of doing and what they, how they want to approach it versus where they're going with the content. And I think that this is something, again, in the learning and development profession that we're experiencing on a daily basis. Tools in content creation are allowing us to accelerate the pace of what we do in a much different way than we've experienced in the past. And so the shape of the L&D professional is changing based on that. And to the point we've been making beforehand, like that also is waking up the lizard brain, as it were. It's like, oh, the bears are chasing me. Like, I don't want the bears to chase me this time, right? Yeah. And so I think that there's a whole tie back to that, and in the way that our profession is seeing that. I'm curious if you saw that as part of the workplace that the team that you were leading, all of that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've seen both with my peers, with the teams, and in the industry right now are people trying to figure out where they fit into the picture with, some of them, and I remember this from a few years ago when people said, but I love writing. I don't want something else to write for me. And it was a resetting of what does it mean for you to partner with an AI tool or agent to do what you love, and how can you reframe it and continue to be the expert? And there is that lizard brain. Oh my gosh, I listened to a podcast today that was related to all of the different tools out there and everything it can do. But the piece that we have to continue to help people, instructional designers, to remember is, what is it that you love to do that you can continue to do in a different capacity or in a different way or faster? And to your point, not being an order taker, asking better questions, digging deeper. And actually, one of the things that I think is really beneficial with rapid design now and AI tools is that we might be able to do more of the evaluation. I always think with the ATD methodology, the E is kind of hanging off sideways because we zoom to the next plan before we take time to say, did that actually work? And I feel like that's a place where we could all lean in a little more. Did it work? Who did it impact? Did we reach our destination?
Yeah, and bringing back, emphasizing the human element, which is fundamentally a theme here today, right? The human-centric element in the whole process. What we have discovered is worked very well back to teams. It's the metaphors or the perspective of AI, right? So, as an example, thinking of AI as another team member that's supporting the team rather than this horrible thing that's going to take over our jobs, right? But it's thinking of it as a team member, and I use AI quite extensively with curriculum design, and what I find personally works so well is that there's nothing more scary than the blank page, right? Just writing an essay or the first question. But, telling AI, I'm going to do a course on X, Y, and Z, I don't expect it to be anywhere near as good as I would make it. But it gives me something to edit. It gives me something to ask questions of, especially when and then I find myself getting very creative. What do you think of this idea, this exercise in this coaching program and such, right? Just recently I've been doing that. So... AI as our friend or AI as something else?
Yeah, there's a lot that you could unpack to with what you just shared, Richard, because there's the element of how AI enables creativity. So enables the human element of writing by giving us an opportunity to get over writer's block, to maybe approach it from a different angle, to have it assume a position or a persona as part of that. But also too, and I think this is a great segue into some of the core content of what we want to talk about today is like, how do you approach the situation again, where we're talking about that could be a very difficult conversation to have with somebody, right? To tell them, hey, no, you need to be using this tool, and here's why, because it's all of that. So, Richard, I'm curious, as we've been, as you're going through your sessions, and we're talking about avoidance as well, what does a well-handled difficult conversation actually look like in practice? And maybe in the context of how we're talking about it here with the approach of AI, like where have you seen that work, or where have you seen that come up in the coaching conversations that you've been having?
Well, there's a number of layers to your question. So even if AI didn't exist, I'm still going to answer your question about
Sure.
difficult conversations first.
Sure.
So if the opportunity is there to for the difficult conversation to be scheduled or later on rather than it's happening right now, then it's so helpful to be able to do some kind of rehearsal. And I've had sessions with clients like that. And one of the things that we do is we start with like, what would be the best possible outcome of this difficult conversation? What would that look like? Right. And then what kind of leader do you need to be, or team leader, or project owner to be in order to enact that type of conversation? But we do something really interesting, and it's called a point of view shift. And it's asking the client, I'm going to use the word client, or interchangeably with leader, to imagine being the other person and taking on their experience and looking out of their eyes, and then as that person, how does, let's say the leader's name is Jane, how would Jane best communicate to you this situation, this issue that they're having? What would be the best way? And they can get a lot of great insights because we have mirror neurons. I've seemed to be talking about the brain a lot today. We have these mirror neurons where we can actually imagine what it's like to be the other person. And different people respond to different things in different ways. And it's there in our unconscious. So this has worked really, really, really well many times, this point of view shift. So the rehearsal, right? Even role playing with the coach itself. Okay, I'm the employee you're having that difficult conversation with. How would I act? And then let's bang it out together, so that they can work through the best possible and maybe even the most challenging possible responses from that person. Now, the second layer of your question was about AI. So I think you came up with the example of you need to
resistance to AI, or like we're experiencing AI at a pace that like folks really have to embrace it, especially again in our field, in our profession of learning and development. Like that is something that like there is a real sense of, if you don't start to embrace it, at least in some capacity, you're going to be left behind, or you are going to have your job phased out, as it were. But like I think that that's a misconception, as it were. Again, we're having the conversation, our AIs aren't having the conversation right now. So like there's a human element to this.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So what's difficult about that thinking is that it's a move away strategy, right? If you don't do X, this terrible thing will happen, and that's that's an extrinsic motivation, punishment, right? The consequence of not taking action. And it's not a very good motivator. It's not sustainable, right? It has to be reminded of it over and over again. This is what will happen if you don't do it every day, kind of thing, right? This is how we invented nagging, right? This is what we do, right? With the people in our lives, right? Because if you ask them to take out the garbage today and they do it, you have to start over again the next day, right? It's short term. That's been proven, right? Long-term sustainable motivation is intrinsic, which means it's linked to our values, what's important to us. So a really good leader would be interested in and aware of the different motivational values of each of their key team members, right? And it's not easy. It takes some practice, but develop the flexibility to speak to person A, who is always motivated by creativity, and person B, who's motivated by learning new things, and person C, who's motivated by the connections to others, right? And speak their motivational language in order to like the positive benefits and how it'll link to their own motivational value system. Yeah. And if possible, it's not always possible again, link it back to we're very, very motivated by having an awareness of how what we do will have positive benefit on others. We're wired that way, this altruistic capacity. That's, people who are very passionate have some way of a sustainable attention, a reminder of how what they're doing, whether it's just being a janitor in a hospital, is having a positive benefit on others around them. So that could be linked into it even better. Yeah.
Leah, I'm curious then, as like a follow up for that, like how have you actually done this in your experience as a leader? Like you mean Richard was sharing, like these are the types of things that a leader can approach, but like where have you seen that really land, or is there a story there that like has like, oh, I really accessed someone on my team because I actually listened to them and actually understood or tried to understand their motivations.
Yeah, I think that all good leaders really need to take the time to get to know their people and what is it that they're motivated by, to your point, both at work and where are they going? What are they, the big picture? Because they may be in a role where they fell into this role and they like parts of it, but you can see, I had someone on my team who was really good at process improvement. He broke things to fix them, and he found things, even with tools like Riverside or like Synthesia, where things needed to be fixed, and it was just part of who he was. I'm not sure he was even aware of it at the time, but we dug into it, and I tried to highlight for him, these are really, for some people it might feel like you're breaking things and causing trouble and asking too many questions. But to me, this is a beautiful skill that you can potentially build into your role in the company, because there's somebody in the company looking for someone to improve process and to look to fix things and make tools better. And it was just, I feel like if you're leading people and you're really digging into who they are and those human skills, what are the skills that they have that are really shining that they might not even see? And also, what are the ones that within this role we need to upskill because has to be done because we need this? And then the third piece now is, and what can we offload to AI if you're not really good at it? I had someone on the team who wasn't a great designer, but once we realized what he could do with AI, he was phenomenal because his skill set was connecting with subject matter experts, understanding product, all of the things that a designer might not even care about. So I feel like there's a piece of that development of people and then offloading the things they don't love onto AI and figuring out what each person's skill set really is.
Yeah, so I think we're both saying the same thing in different ways, which is really quite beautiful. And it comes down to, the leader getting to know the different, getting to know their people and responding to each one of them differently. It's so easy, and
Yes.
and I've done it, to just think of the team as this sort of amorphous blob of people. That's just this one personality, which it can become once it's really gelled. But they all have their individual skills, capabilities, stretches for comfort zone stretches, and values. Yeah.
It's interesting because what you both are leading us into then is a conversation around career development. Like, what are organizations doing really well right now that is actually getting it right for career development in a world where, again, we have access to tools that could teach us anything, literally anything. I could pop up my computer today and I could say, hey Claude, teach me about coaching, and it'll teach me everything I want to know about coaching, right? So like, what are organizations doing well right now that are actually getting it right? For either of you.
I would say, for me, what I've seen in different organizations is an effort to first categorize what skills are required, so competencies of a role, and to be honest, if they do a nice job at forecasting what other roles require, then people can think about, well, I'm interested in that. I need to learn project management or coaching or this or that. The other thing is that some companies are investing in bringing people in to do training or in sending people out to train. Not all companies, and I do think it's a challenge for global companies because of the cost. But I will say that I've seen the difference between one company versus another, where they really did say, and the leadership then has to say, take the day off and go learn something. Find something that's going to, and then come back and teach the rest of the team. But I think that corporations, if they're doing it well, are investing time based on both the capabilities that they need and growth capabilities.
Yeah. Richard, how about you?
Yeah, it's interesting because when companies do approach us, they come to us with their problems, right? Right, and here, help us solve this. So I've got this sort of backlog of problematic organization. But I have to say that I'm gonna go back to the human element. I think what we've noticed that the companies that really do create what we call a coaching culture, where they get a number of important people in the organization to learn some coaching skills and then go move from a top-down directive fixing managerial style to more of a coach approach. They're not coaches, but they're using a coach approach. They're the ones that really care about their people. They're the ones that care about their people, and they want their people to develop. It's not just about numbers and profit. That's what we've noticed. The ones who successfully integrated and actually made some changes in the organization to the point where the people are saying, this is great. And we feel so appreciative that we work for an organization that's willing to invest time, money, and energy into us, the person, the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think that there's an element in that when they care about their people, they're also expressing that and allowing their people to fail along the way. Like there's an element of coaching. I'm sure, Richard, you would. Well, I'm curious if you would agree with this, but there's an element of coaching where you say something, you're working at it, and you get it wrong, and then you come back to it again. You have to think about it and how to approach it maybe from a different lens. Then you go back to it and try it, and maybe it goes a little bit like there's I think in the culture where people care about you in an organization, they care about your success and are allowing you to fail. I've been part of organizations where failure was just not an option. Like if you failed, you were gone, and so like that was not there were development opportunities because people left, and then you got to fill roles and take new expansion. Like not because there was an intentional practice in that way. So I'm curious if that resonates with how someone might approach coaching.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Sorry to interrupt you. Oh yes, because
Yeah.
there's a big passionate topic for me because I've been looking at it historically, and if you don't mind me giving a little bit of that,
Yeah.
we're coming out of still the indoctrination. I'm using a very strong word of the Industrial Revolution, which was about working in factories where if you failed, yes, because if you fail, I worked in a factory. I know this firsthand. If you fail in your position, you're screwing it up for everybody who's following. You're slowing down the production, right? So, and our formal education system really was designed, I don't know if you know this, but fundamentally it was designed to make people workers in factories, right? To do the same things over and over again. Hence the multiplication tables, right? Get in trouble if they're late. You get in trouble if you're late in a factory. Talking to your neighbor, right? That's the things I got in trouble for as a kid. That shadow is still there. And I find it so interesting that companies like Google and Yahoo and Apple are spending millions of dollars trying to assist people to become innovative and creative, because that wasn't what the formal education system was about. So yeah, it's about creating a culture where failure, I think we should change the word, right? It's feedback. It's feed forward, because this is it's like Thomas Edison's famous quote, I know that 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb before I got it right on the 1,001. I might be misquoting him. And so we have something called the feedback frame. And so if I have a client that I'm working with, and they go into the failure frame, which doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, right? And
Right.
asking questions like, again, what is it that you wanted to accomplish? How is this an opportunity? What have you learned that you would do differently next time? So we bring it out of the past and into the future. And I'm looking forward to a world that embraces failure, right? Isn't that the whole idea behind things like the principle of brainstorming? Every idea is a good idea, right?
Yeah.
So people need to be relaxed. That's what needs to happen. People need to be relaxed, and I go back to regulation again. People need to be have psychological safety, right, to come up with those crazy ideas. People need to be knowing that if they fail, and I put that in quotations, they're instantly forgiven. It's not a detriment. It's not a mark on your performance review kind of thing. It should be the opposite, that you did something, it didn't work, and you learn from it.
Yeah, the retrospective piece of that, I think, is so powerful. I love that you call it a feedback frame, because that ability to have the retrospective and look, and if you look at it in science, to your point, science, I was listening to the Acquired episode on Google and how the Waymo was designed. It's phenomenal to hear how many times they kept iterating, and nobody said to them, "You're wrong, you're bad. Stop doing it." They said, "Okay, try again, try again. What could you do differently?" I do think that all of us in learning and development who are trying to learn new things, number one, we have to stop comparing the grass is always greener on the other side. Yes, somebody else might be faster at it because maybe they like it more, but we have to keep trying to grow and at the same time be comfortable with, I'm not really that good at it. How can I get better? And I loved what you said, Richard, about the feedback loops and like, what did I do well? What can I do better next time?
Yeah, Leah, it's interesting you call that out too, because I'm going to be devil's advocate in this, and because there is an opportunity with AI. Again, as we're talking about like human-centric skills, right? There's an opportunity with AI for us to play the coach of AI, because AI often, especially when we're talking about like generative AI, using any number of the models, it gets it wrong. You're like, no, that's not what I meant. I need you to adjust this, and no, I need to like. And I'm curious, Richard, you're shaking your head now. You're nodding your head. Like, how do we turn into the coach individually and become the coach of that tool using natural language, using language that I would use to coach you, to coach Leah, to coach anybody. Like there's this really interesting evolution that we turn into as we're trying to get the tool to do the thing that we actually want it to do versus the hundreds of times that it fails leading into that. And you're getting frustrated at all of that, but I'm curious.
So that's I just want to make sure I got your question right. So how does the user of AI become the coach for AI? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there's a natural translation of us who are trying to be innovative and failing over and over again, seeing failure happen on a consistent basis from the tool that we're using to actually be innovative, right? Like we're not going to get something perfect coming out of AI every single time. Especially again when we're using generative AI. Like there's an iterative process that goes into that we experience failure and we use natural language to actually coach it to make changes.
Well, I go back to what I was saying earlier when I was mentioning this concept of coach position, right? So coach position again is it's stepping into this attitude of this mindset, perhaps, or embodying this mindset of being not married to the outcome. Right? So this is something that it takes a little bit of time for new coaches to learn that when the client comes up with their outcome, that the coach themselves is not invested in it in the same way the client is, at least not emotionally, right? And this is a fantastic capacity to develop. So from personal experience, I can say that yes, I mean AI has blatantly got things wrong. And I'm like, okay, right? It's right? I can't say it's only human, but it was designed and fed and what's the word?
Trained off of humans. It is a reflection of us, right?
So it's it's an evolution, you could say. That's a terrible word to use, but it's a development out of humans beings creating it. So I think that would be my answer. If we're going to take a coach approach to working with AI, is treating AI the same way we would treat our clients. Now, for me personally, because I've been doing this for over 20 years, what I'm describing as coach position has been enormously effective for me in all other roles in my life, right? Husband, friend, brother, team leader, faculty lead, which I am, and people have commented on how calm and cool and collected I can maintain myself. And it's all because I've developed this capacity to not make something that someone else says or does mean something. It's just there. It's just words. It's just body language. It's just energy, right? And that spilled over into my interactions with AI. Mostly, I can think of one time I got frustrated, and I think I swore a bit. And but I'm only human too, right? I think that's the answer to that question. The other thing I have to say that again I owe to my coaching background is I'm very good at asking questions of AI, because that's what coaches do. They ask questions. They ask really good questions, and I typically get the response I'm aiming for. I don't have to keep rewriting the question. Yeah.
I think that's a really important skill set. Like when we talk about human and using AI tools, the ability to ask deeper questions. It's in sales enablement and sales. It's everything. Good sellers, good people who do solution selling are asking questions all the time.
Yeah.
And then if you ask them to shift to using AI, they're better at it because they're asking those questions. They're not just thinking of a prompt that's a few words. They're building an entire scenario around it. And if you think about that from coaching the AI, I always say I fight with Copilot more than I fight with anyone in my family. Because I'm like, where did you think I know how to use Mind Tickle? You added it to my resume. I did not put that anywhere. Where did you get that? Don't do that again. But it's the ability to ask questions and the ability to coach the tools and recognize that you have to, I think, and that's where that whole critical thinking conversation comes in. And that's a skill, obviously, we want to help people to continue to develop.
As an aside, I think it could be an interesting sort of exercise in one's own personal development, because when you catch the triggers that come from AI, something you could work with a coach or on your own and stuff. Because for me, it's not about AI getting something wrong, but I every now and then if AI doesn't remember something that I've said to it before, to be honest, there's a little bit of trigger there, and then this was interesting. One time I copied and pasted what ChatGPT suggested I do a few weeks ago, and I put it in the chat, and I wrote, "This is So I went ahead and I did this, and it congratulated me, and it wasn't my idea, but I rolled with it. Why not?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think we're getting at some of the tangible takeaways, but I'm curious, like, it sounds like the ability to ask questions, the curiosity that comes with being someone who's in a coaching role, all those skills that again leaders could take away and use. But let me ask this: like, imagine you're someone listening to this right now, you're leading an organization or you're an L&D professional, all of that, and they just want to do something different this next week. We've talked about some things, but what is a tangible step that they could take away to be more human-centric this next week? What would you tell them to do?
Well, you brought up the difficult questions thing example. So I think one potential thing to consider is the next time you're having a conversation with somebody that it's challenging, to ask yourself what would be the ideal outcome. What is it that I want? And then ask yourself, why is that important to me, right? And maybe ask that a few times. And why is that important to me? To get to the core of what's really important to me. And then begin to ask yourself, how would I show up maybe differently so that I can have that result, right? And even better, to actually imagine it, right? To mentally rehearse it before having that conversation. And then when you have the conversation afterwards, ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's always useful to scale things, especially emotional things, right? How satisfied I am with the conversation. And people rarely give themselves a 10. And if it's less than a 10, let's say it's a 7, what would I do differently next time to make it just an 8? And then if the person's up for it, mentally rehearse having the conversation with that added behavior or way of being. It could even be something being more silent, listening more, something like that. Yeah. That would be one idea I have. Yeah.
I love that. Leo, what about you? Again, coming from again, a different perspective as an L&D professional and a leader within the field, is there something that you would say, given the conversation that we've had about taking the next steps this week to actually practice some of this?
Absolutely. And I think it would be a piggyback a bit on Richard is curiosity and empathy. So what I heard and what I feel like we talked about a lot today was curiosity, being interested in the other person, being interested in who they are, finding places where you can be curious, whether it's in developing your skills, human skills or AI skills. What can I learn this week about somebody on my team or my boss to put their perspective? And the other one is empathy. What can I do to put myself in their shoes? Even if it's somebody who you're frustrated or angry with or disappointed with, why are they behaving that way? What is going on for them? I think it actually, what you said, Richard, made me think about, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of what did I do wrong when you flip it to what was the reason that they did something or said something or reacted to me. Maybe it doesn't have a lot to do with me at all. So I would go with curiosity and empathy this week.
I agree, yeah. And if you don't mind, I'd like to continue. I could do this all day with you, my dear. But
It's cool.
Flow with it, right? Yeah. So, what has a question is, what has to be true for this person? What do they believe in order to behave the way they do? And even better, what might be the positive intention or positive purpose behind their behavior? What are they wanting? Acceptance, respect, appreciation. There's something there. We believe at Erickson that every behavior has deep at the core something that person wants that is actually positive, right? And it's usually something emotional or something on the level of values, acceptance, connection, appreciation, yeah, and then
Status.
yeah,
Interesting.
acknowledgement, yeah.
It's I mean, to bring us back to curiosity, I think that there's to what Richard you shared about the ability to ask that question without assigning value or meaning to it for you specifically as the person asking the question, rather than again saying, okay, well, if they want status, that also means for me X, Y, and Z. Or if they want, again, being able to put yourself in that objective place, it can be incredibly valuable.
And right, what you said brings up a lovely question to follow. And what does status mean for you? That way, you're not making a judgment based on your own past experience of what status is. Oh, I'm curious. What does status mean for you? What would, if you had status, what would that look like, feel like, sound like? That curiosity that we're discussing here, and right. Again, I'm going to have to quote the brain study. When people get to talk about themselves, most people, they have a dopamine hit. Yeah, right. Yeah. Not everybody. Some introverts don't like it, but most everybody, when they talk about, that's why doing podcasts are so enjoyable. I mean, we get to talk, and it's very rewarding.
It's almost like talking to human beings and asking each other questions and engaging with each other is valuable for us and value to our it brings value to our experience.
I'm glad you've been enjoying this AI version of Richard, while binging.
In case you didn't know. Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So here's what I'm taking away from the conversation. There's plenty to get caught up with AI, automation, all the things that are changing around us. And what we've been talking about isn't, trying to fight that, right? It's about how we anchor ourselves in what actually makes us human, the communication that we have, the coaching that we are talking about, and the ability to have these difficult conversations. That's actually what matters. And so, for me, as being, chapter president for this and part of this conversation, it's really what building our capability is all about for beginning, the theme that I've had for this year. And so, we don't have to know where we're headed, but we have to know how to get there and how to get there using the skills that have, been with us over the course of multiple generations. We went from the wheel. This is a bad analogy, but it's true. We went from the wheel to farming implements to all of these things. And while the pace of that change is accelerating, and these are still tools that we use, just like any of these other things. But the connections that we have with people are things that have been transcendent throughout that time. And so, I want to thank both of you for being here to have the conversation with me, and for, again, all the work that you do in your fields to help support our human connections and the ability to maintain our humanity as part of this. I'll leave it up for closing thoughts, and then I'll close this out.
Just want to thank you again for the invitation. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've got lots of notes of my own because of it.
That's great.
I think the last thing I'll say is fearlessly curious.
Yeah.
I think that's, it's the ability to be curious without being fearful of what you'll learn.
I might have written a book about that, Leah, over here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But Richard, anything you want to share at the end?
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I love how the two of us here are coming from overlapping but different experiences, and there's so much commonality in what emerged out of our conversation together, right? The curiosity and get to know your people, and the flexibility, and all of that. And I love the fearless curiosity. So I'm just going to add to that, right? Turn everything in as best you can into an authentic, curious question.
Yeah.
Be open to surprise. Be open to surprise, meaning the answers you get from the other person. Right? Yeah.
No, it makes sense. So it makes sense. So because again, if we're assigning meaning to the question before we get the response for it, then all of a sudden we're giving our bias rather than having the opportunity to be surprised in that moment. So
Well, then the question
totally,
is loaded or it's leading, right? So
yep,
be ready to be
absolutely.
open to surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both again for being here. I appreciate it. If you're listening to this and you're thinking like, I need to step up my coaching skills, my communication, my ability to lead through uncertainty, you're not alone. Obviously, we've been having this conversation, and that's why ATD Austin exists. But also that's why we've partnered with Erickson Coaching International this year to make sure that you're having these experiences. And we would highly encourage you to connect with us, connect with Erickson, check out their programs. If coaching is calling you, I know they've got a program this week as well. That's maybe a little less traditional. They have a shorter virtual program that they're working on and piloting this week. So there's lots of opportunities to engage with Erickson Coaching International as well. But we're so happy you're part of our community. It really is something that we're building the future together as a community, and really the future is open for those that are investing in people, starting with themselves. So thanks for listening. We'll see you in our next conversation. And again, thanks Leah and Richard for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Bye, Richard.
Bye.